Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Hi. Y'all take a seat, please. I know we've had nice snacks and delicious coffee, and now we'll get started on our day, our Sunday gathering. So, my name is Terry Hibbert-Ismert, and I am on the board and also a member of the care response team. So if you ever have anyone that needs special attention or loving or care or a card or anything, please feel free to email me and the rest of the team at care@houstonoasis.org. There's been some really wonderful things we've celebrated. There's been some things that were really necessary to get taken care of. So anyway, without further ado, these are our values, and this community lives and believes these values. Meaning comes from making a difference. And if you've looked on the volunteering and the things that this community does regularly, you'll know that that is absolutely true, because there's many volunteer activities and many ways to enrich the community of Houston. All right, I'd just like to take a moment to wish everybody in here a happy Father's Day. Thank you all for being here. Let's give a round of applause for all the dads or the mentors or the people who have helped raise folks or had nice pets. So, no, you know, Ken and I don't have children, so we just celebrate through the pets. So anyway, but thank you all for being here and for spending a special day here with us for this morning gathering. So right now we have a speaker. Her name is Cynthia McDonald, a social worker in the city of Chicago. She authors a blog called freedmenhealthandwellness.com, which speaks on the social determinants of health of Black Americans. She also works with various organizations to normalize atheism among the Black community. Her talk is entitled History Erasure, the Christian Nationalist Attack on Education, and we really need to hear what you have to say today. So thank you so much for being here. Welcome, Cynthia, please.
Greetings, Houston Oasis, and not only happy Father's Day, but happy the eve of Juneteenth. So for those who are here and those who are watching online, if you're not familiar with Juneteenth, it is a holiday that is celebrated on June 19th to commemorate the emancipation of enslaved people in the United States. The holiday was first celebrated right here in Texas, where we are right now, on that date in 1865. In the aftermath of the Civil War, enslaved people were declared free under the terms of the 1862 Emancipation Proclamation. The holiday origin story begins approximately 51 miles from here in Galveston, Texas, which was the most westernmost area of the Union in 1865. When enslaved people were told that their emancipation on June 19th, they had technically already been freed for 2.5 years prior, when President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st, 1863. Slaveholders in Texas had kept the information to themselves, extending the period of violent exploitation of enslaved African Americans. The following year, in 1866, a celebration was held in Texas and the first Juneteenth observance to the recognized freedom of slavery in the United States. It is considered the longest running holiday in African American and Black communities and is often observed within the communities that celebrate on the third Saturday in June. Juneteenth actually became a federal holiday in 2021 after the U.S. Congress passed the Juneteenth National Independence Day Act. When I was growing up, I thought that I had a great deal of Black history education. I went to a predominantly Black Catholic school, and most of our teachers were Black. In school, we had partnerships with the Scholastic Book Club, where Black history books for elementary school children were distributed. We watched Glory as a class that actually gave a history on Troop 54, which was one of the first Black regiments that was mostly filled with ex-slaves during the Civil War. We are also often assigned reports that we had to give accounts to Black leaders from abolition to civil rights. And we would also put on plays during Black History Month, where we would be assigned Black historical figures to learn about and give an exposition in front of our parents and guests. We even would bring up educators from the diaspora who would teach us about education in other African countries. My 7th and 8th grade teachers went as far as teaching us the South African national anthem when Nelson Mandela was released from prison in 1989, and yes, I just dated myself. I believe it goes like, Koze sikele Afrika, manupaka mizu dumowayo, iva imitanda soyetu, kozi sikelea, tina lusafuwayo. Amanda. Thank you. I still can't believe I remember that back from 1989. Well, with all this exposure during the individual education, which I must say was more than most, I still did not know the tip of the iceberg, which was considered Black history, even less on how it was so intertwined with American history. I did not know that Black Americans fought in every war that the U.S. participated in. I did not know about the 100 massacres of Black townships besides Tulsa. I did not know how many lynchings happened during the Jim Crow and beyond. I did not know that most slaves were taken from the western coast of Africa. I did not know that slaves were mostly traded versus kidnapped. I did not know about the Trail of Tears that relocated indigenous tribes that also had a high population of Black slaves. I did not know about the racial gap being so massive because of policies like redlining, land theft, denial of the GI Bill to Black veterans coming home from war, and not being able to participate in wealth-building policies like the Homestead Act of 1862. I did not know about Henrietta Lacks. I did not know about Marion Sims and his experiments on enslaved Black women that helped forward the field of gynecology. I did not know. And despite my previous educators taking the time to educate me and my fellow classmates, we had an education that was at tertiary at best. Now that I'm an adult and living in 2023, it is alarming how states like the one that we are in right now are participating in attacks on education and taking away what little is being taught in schools and labeling as woke or CRT. And according to an opinion piece that was called, "What is the Meaning of Woke?" Once a term used by Black Americans, it is now a rallying cry for the GOP in USA Today. Despite the 2023 Conservative Political Action Conference, speaker after speaker attacked woke ideology in their speeches to conservative activists. Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley decreed wokeness as a virus, most dangerous in any pandemic, hands down. I travel the country calling out woke industrial complex in America. GOP presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy bragged. Elsewhere, Republicans have declared war on woke capitalism and even introduced legislations like the Stop Woke Act in Florida, an acronym for Stop the Wrongs to Our Kids and Employees. Among conservative lawmakers and activists, woke tends to be, across the board, a denunciation of progressive values and liberal initiatives. Some have used it to attack trans and gay rights, while others apply it to critical race theory, a legal theory that examines systemic racism as a part of American institutions and teachings of the New York Times 1619 Project in public schools. But although woke has been used as a dog whistle for the right, and according to Merriam-Webster, woke is an adjective that means having marked by an active awareness of systemic injustices, prejudices, and especially those involving the treatment of ethnic, racial, or sexual minorities. So when you hear GOP officials say things like, Florida is the state where woke comes to die, they are actually saying those who want to bring awareness of systemic injustices and prejudices, especially those involving the treatment of ethnic, racial, or sexual minorities, awareness comes here to die. So how did we as Americans get here? How did we reignite a war on education? Let's first recognize the Daughters of the Confederacy and the myth of the lost cause. Well, what is the lost cause? Well, the lost cause of the Confederacy, or simply the lost cause, is an American pseudo-historical negation myth that claims the cause of the Confederate States during the Civil American War was just heroic and not centered on slavery. Beyond forced unpaid labor and denial of freedom to leave the slaveholders, the treatment of slaves in the United States, often including sexual abuse and rape, the denial of education and punishments like whippings, families were often split up by the sale of one or more member, usually never to see or hear from each other again. By turning a blind eye to these realities, lost cause proponents reimagine slavery as a positive good and deny the alleviation of the conditions of slavery was the central cause of the American Civil War, contrary to statements made by Confederate leaders, such as the Cornerstone speech given by Confederate Vice President Alexander H. Stephens. Instead, they framed the war as a defense of states' rights, necessary to protect their agrarian economy against supposed Northern aggression. The Union victory is thus explained as the result of its greater size and industrial wealth, while the Confederate side is portrayed as having a greater morality and military skill. Modern historians overwhelmingly disagree with these characterizations, noting the central cause of the war was slavery. So where did this myth originate? Well, you can't talk about the Daughters of Confederacy, who has a chapter right here in the great state of Texas. The UDC is a 129-year organization founded in Nashville, Tennessee in 1894. It was originally formed to give Confederate soldiers a proper burial that had fallen during wartime. The organization began to fundraise for Confederate veterans to provide them with pensions, veterans' homes, and putting up monuments in their honor so that the service would not be forgotten. Although the lost cause myth was mostly writings in books and newspapers as early as 1866, they were propagated by authors like journalist Edward A. Pollard from Virginia or ex-Confederacy President Jefferson Davis. The UDC took their activism further by pushing a narrative of history they rewrote in textbooks to embellish what really happened in the Confederate States before and during the Civil War. These lessons significantly undermine the terrible treatment of enslaved Black people, so slavery did not look as horrific to future generations. One of the textbooks written by a UDC for Mississippi Public Schools in 1914 said, "This book is dedicated by the author to the youth of the Southland, hoping that a perusal of his pages will inspire them with respect and admiration for the Confederate soldiers who were part of the Ku Klux Klan and whose deeds of courage and valor have never been surpassed and rarely equaled in the annals of history. Fast forward to the 21st century, this pursuit will re-emerge with the rise of movements like Black Lives Matter, which was to bring awareness of police terrorism on Black bodies, and the rise of voices online calling for reparations for slavery and Jim Crow. Enters Christopher R. Ruffo, who is an American conservative activist and senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute. He was a research fellow at the Discovery Institute, a Christian think tank known for its opposition to the theory of evolution and advocacy for intelligent design to be taught in public schools. Shortly after the death of George Floyd, companies started to do diversity, equity, inclusion training and also sensitivity training. Ruffo started to write about this and call critical race theory in the governmental and other publicly funded institutions as a kind of occult indoctrination. Ruffo contended in 2020 that critical race theory had pervaded every institution in the federal government. Even though critical race theory considers the idea that racism is systemic and in the laws, policies, regulations, and every court decision creates and also continue this historical racial prejudice in the United States, Ruffo described his strategy to oppose critical race theory as intentional, using the term to conflate various race-related ideas in order to create a negative association. Ruffo said that we will eventually term critical race theory as toxic, as we put all the various cultural insanities under the brand category. The goal is to have public read something crazy in newspapers and immediately think critical race theory. Ruffo had described intersectionality as a hard left academic theory that reduces people to a network of racial, gender, and sexual orientation identities and intersect in complex ways and determine whether you are an oppressor or an oppressed. However, according to Kimberly Crenshaw, who and an influential figure in critical race theory, what Ruffo and Republicans are calling critical race theory is a whole range of things, most of which no one would sign to, and many of things are just simply not about racism. Through interviews with Tucker Carlson on Fox News, you heard of that guy, Ruffo reportedly influenced the Trump administration to issue an executive order to prohibit federal agencies from having diversity training that address topics such as systemic racism, white privilege, and critical race theory. The administration described such programs as divisive, anti-American propaganda. Ruffo had appeared multiple times on Tucker Carlson Tonight and The Ingram Angle, according to the New Yorker writer Benjamin Wallace Wells. Ruffo's story on racially dividing bias training sessions in Seattle was a phenomenon that helped to generate more leaks from across the country about the contents of courses and diversity training programs. According to the Washington Post, Snopes, and New York, Ruffo had misrepresented the contents of diversity training programs and course curricula. For example, he falsely claimed that a diversity consultant hired by the U.S. Treasury Department had told employees essentially that America was fundamentally a white supremacist country and urged them to accept their white racial superiority. However, the diversity consultant had said no such thing. Ruffo denies the Washington Post characterization, saying, "This is an absurd position that only an ideologue could believe." Ruffo had also falsely claimed that course curriculum in California calls for students to honor Aztec gods on human sacrifice and to commit counter-genocide against white Christians, which the curriculum did not do. He falsely claimed that a document by Oregon school district calls for adopting the educational theories of Brazilian Marxist Paulo Freire and advocates turning students against Marxist revolution's enemies and into liberated masses. However, the document had no reference to revolution, its enemies, or to liberated masses. It only refers Freire's call to treat education as an act of liberation and mutual humanization. Rufo claimed that staff resources at school districts assumes that whites are born racist. However, the document only urged teachers to move beyond the belief that you aren't racist if you don't purposely or consciously act in racist ways. Rufo has also been a predominant. So, Houston, we have a problem. You have any questions? Comments? Concerns? Did I pronounce a word wrong?
Oh, okay, greetings. So here's my question. I need to preface it a little bit, but I'm a public school teacher, so I'm kind of in the middle of this stuff. Don't you think it's important for teachers, is just one example of a way to resist this type of stuff, is for teachers to join unions if they're available, because that gives you someone to back you up. You're not out there by yourself. So what do you think about the idea of teachers, like in education, joining unions and having that as a way to buttress their efforts to fight against this?
No, unions are great. We have a pretty powerful teachers union in Chicago right now. They were able to fight back against a lot of different policies that, the mayor and even like the governor was trying to place down on, especially during the pandemic when it was so difficult to get teaching materials specifically for kids in poverty or who had less internet access in order for them to do their lessons during the pandemic. So organizing is one of my favorite things. I'm an organizer, and a lot of times you don't need a lot of people. You just need a critical mass of people that are focused on the end goal. And the end goal is to topple policies that are harmful to teachers and to children. And it's so interesting when I read a lot of different articles, and part of my activism is doing hosting work for the Atheist community of Austin. I'm one of the hosts and producers from the nonprofits. And we talk about this stuff a lot. And you just seeing these different stories from all across the United States over and over again, when we're talking about these things, is to bring awareness to our general audience that it will spark conversations, and it would even spark others for getting involved in organizing so they can push back against these different policies. I can't even imagine being a public school teacher in Texas right now. You have to basically, you always should be choosy with your words, right? Especially when you're impressing young minds. But to the point where you have to basically give revisionist history depending on what you are teaching to kids. And so by the time that they're leaving your classroom, they don't get all the information they get something that's completely not what the lesson is really supposed to be about. By the time that they get into university levels and actually take real history classes, they're shocked. That's not what I learned. And I say, yeah, because what you learned was fiction. It wasn't proper. So, and I even taught in a charter school for a year. So, and I taught in an alternative school, and that's the last time these kids will shine. And it really opened my eyes on how important teachers' roles are in young people's lives. And with that being said, teachers organizing, teachers involved in unions, teachers going to school board meetings and pushing back on these things, teachers talking to their legislators, teachers actually even making other people in their area aware of problematic legislatures that are in office right now that need to go because they're pushing these policies. That is the work. And that is, and it's not an easy lift, but sometimes in order for the proper thing to happen, you have to do the heavy work.
Before we get to our final question, I wanted to comment as someone who works in public education in Texas. I'm pretty sure we're maybe like 3 or 4 months away from Shakespeare's Twelfth Night being banned due to drag.
Thank you so much for your talk. Incredibly insightful, and it was just really eye-opening in many respects. One question that I have, you had talked about what reactive things are possible, as initiated by teachers as well as, I assume, others in the community. Are there any proactive activities that are going on to prevent this from becoming an even bigger issue in all the other states that aren't following suit yet?
I would say that it's kind of hard to really think about proactivism against this, because it's Christian nationalism in of itself has played the long game. They've been the white evangelical base have been organizing for a very, very long time. So when we saw a lot of these policies come up, first we had the decision against Roe v. Wade. We had also other what they call the trigger bills that went into law after that happened. And then you had what they call the lemon test when the teacher in Alabama won his Supreme Court case when he was going out on the football field praying loudly before and after games and making his students pray with him, even though the school said that you can't do that, or you shouldn't do that. If you want to pray in the locker room or whatever, but just don't do it on school grounds in front of people. He did it anyway, and the Supreme Court said that he was exercising his First Amendment rights. So, but even though we kind of forget that whole thing about the First Amendment also has that whole thing called the Establishment Clause that separates church and state, but whatever. So this is what we're dealing with right now. The only thing I can say is that at least we have organizations like Freedom from Religion, and also the ACLU. I know the NAACP has thrown in their hat in the ring, who have a long history of litigations when it comes to issues like this. So really engaging them and really even making yourself involved, since they are kind of like the organizations that are doing the work already when these things come up, and they have lawyers and they have people who are pretty learned about these different issues. That is the best that I can really say about what is proactive right now, because organizations like that are already established. It's just that we who may be in the fray would be concerned enough to engage them, to help their numbers to actually possibly overturn policies, and other places like other states who may have defeated the bills doesn't necessarily mean that somebody else will not reintroduce them again. So, it's kind of like being aware and also propping up the work of these places so that we can try to keep some type of a semblance of proper education for our kids once and for all. I see a little one back there. Hi, little one.
All right, guys, so I'm going to make the announcements now because then we're going to be let out with 2 songs. And so that'll just be sort of our ending for the day. We have upcoming events. We have Oasis cards, a bicycle ride, and book club. You can take a look in your program and see that. Lunch today is at Hokkaido, Japanese Kitchen, 9108 Bel Air Boulevard, Houston. It's 3.2 miles away. And if you ever have any ideas for speakers or any ideas, please let us know at board. And also, we have all the proper email addresses you can send things to. So, anyway, thank you all. Happy Father's Day.
I know you get a little bit nervous when somebody labeled the treasurer gets up. If you have an opportunity, see if you can support Oasis a little bit. We pay rent, we pay the musician, we pay the speakers. So if you're able to, you could drop a little money in the black hat back there, but we do have more modern ways of giving. One of the easiest ways is the QR code on the back of the bulletin is an easy way to donate. If you're not able to donate, don't worry about it. We're just happy to have you here. We actually have several new people here today, so we're delighted to see new faces. And thank you very much.
Without any more further ado, we're going to get started with our musical guest. Johnny, and I didn't ask you, but I'm going to try Valiko. Closing it. I was a teacher for 38 years. Is a highly sought-after performer whose career has taken him across the world. He's laid back acoustic vibe reminiscent of Jack Johnson. And so everybody, put your hands together and welcome him.
Combination of words I could put on the back of a postcard. No song that I could sing, but I could try for your heart. Our dreams, and they're made out of real things, like a shoebox of photographs with sepia tone loving. Love is the answer, at least for most of the questions in my heart, like why we're here and where did we go and how come it's so hard. It's not always easy and sometimes life can be deceiving. I'll tell you one thing, it's always better when we're together. It's always better when we're together. We look at them stars when we're together. It's always better when we're together. It's always better when we're together. All these moments can find their way into my dreams tonight. I know that they'll be gone when the morning light sings and brings no things. But tomorrow night you see that they'll be gone too. Too many things we got to do. But if all these dreams can find their way into my day-to-day scene, I'd be under the impression I was somewhere in between, with only 2, just me and you. Not so many things we got to do, or places we got to be. We'll sit beneath the mango tree now. It's always better when we're together, somewhere in between together. It's always better when we're together. It's always better when we're together. And I believe in memories, they look so pretty when I sleep. And hey now, and when I wake up, you look so pretty, sleeping next to me. But there is not enough time. There is not no song I could sing. There is no combination of words I could say, but I'll tell you one thing, we're better together.